Hey guys, welcome to part two of What's News. J77 here. Going to be talking about a few main topics, including a little bit of last update as my general feeling, because I'm really not going to talk about this again unless something major happened. But I want to clear some things up regarding this whole Paula Deen situation. But I want to save that for last because I really want to pay attention to some of the stories that has popped up. I'm gonna start with the Doma thing. A lot of people have voiced their opinion. I had read some stuff about it. I've seen some news coverage about it. I'm actually happy that it's been voted down. Prop 8 has been voted down. Doma has been voted down. But I have to say, people got to use strong precaution as to celebrating too quickly. And I think a lot of the news media, and even people who actually got criticized for voicing their opinion, even though I actually believe they're actually right, to over celebrate. Keep in mind, there is still um, there are still people who believe that these kind of laws, along with other laws, especially one I'm going to be talking about after this one, they still believe that it's a state-to-state thing, and I'm always very in the middle when it comes to that. I believe that some states have the right to make laws according to what's going on in the state at that given time, but also believe that sometimes they can overstep their bounds or even discriminate against other people in the namesake of their own interests. And you know who I'm talking about. Politicians does this all the time. Um, this is a thing I'm always worried about. It may not happen now, it may not happen for a few months from now, but you better believe there's going to be somebody who is either a radical or religious fanatic who happens to be in Congress and is going to look to pass laws or similar laws to basically either restrict or basically take away the rights of gays and lesbians in their state. There are still states out there who strictly will not recognize the equally let's put it this way: it will not recognize that gay marriage is equal towards traditional marriage, if you want to call it that. My feeling towards this situation, I can care less if they want to marry. And that they're not. I'm not me. That's not me. And they're not bothering me. They're not messing up my job. They're not messing up my foundation of my belief. So why should I mess with them? I don't care less. Whether I believe in their lifestyle or not, it's irrelevant to me. That's their lifestyle. That has nothing to do with me, and therefore I should not, interfere with their happiness. And that's all that is. And I think a lot of people brought a good point about these laws basically treating them as low-class citizens. Why are you making laws treating them like low-class citizens? Because you feel it's a tradition that marriage between a man and a woman. I got news for you. That tradition doesn't really fly much in this day and age anymore. My uncle, who is a licensed minister, he don't even marry people in the church. He marry people in their own home, in the special gardens, in the park, in their apartments. And whether you know it or not, they don't go. If you ask why, they don't go with that traditional marriage in the church thing. They just don't. Um, to me, it doesn't bother me at all. The fact is that there's some people still bothered by this, especially something that I read on when I came to the cafe this morning, and I actually sat down. It was actually an AM paper, and somebody written here, "Why is the feds getting involved in this?" It's already been written in the Bible that the marriage is constitution as a man and a woman. And the first thing I say, that's your first mistake right there. It's a religious thing. Don't force a religious thing on me or anybody else. And that's something that I think people are still trying to do. They're trying to, integrate their own religion as not only what they believe, but the law of the entire country. And you just can't do that, especially when there's so many other religions out there. Look, if you don't believe it because your religious belief, that's fine. But don't force it on me because what I believe is not what you believe, no matter what you guys say. And people take that Bible to literally, not realizing there's a lot of stuff in there that is also discriminatory, not only towards other cultures, other people of other religion, but also towards the opposite sex. And it's kind of funny how, that's a long time ago. You can't really take that now. But when it comes to something like gays and lesbian, they want to go back to the ancient times. And to me, I'm like this: if God had a problem with gays and lesbians, He has a very weird way of showing it because they've been around and they're still going to be around even after I'm gone. So there you go with that. So again, I'm happy about it, but I'm also very cautious about it because, like I said, there is going to be there is going to be states that are going to try and make laws, similar laws to go around what the Feds is. And let's be honest, the Fed didn't actually. There is no real constitution to actually protect people from states doing that. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. This is not over by a long shot. This is not over by a long shot. This is going to continue going down throughout history, and it's going to be always continuing conflicts. Whether or not whether or not people deem this as constitutional or just immoral in general. So this is not the end, but the beginning of a very long process for years to come. I'd like to hear your guys' opinion on this. I will leave a link to an article so you guys can read it. But to me, I'm happy, but I'm not going to sit there and do jumping jacks either because, like I said, we still got a long way to go. There's a lot of people who still have that mentality that this is immoral and is going to bring down the country, even though if that was the case, our country would have been going down years ago, before the United States existed. On to the Voting Right Act, and this is something that's very important, and this is something that informs me why I feel that in terms, especially with the voters' rights, I think it has to be in a constitutional amendment that set the record straight, not even just for one state, but for all states. And this is something that's worrying a lot of activists, a lot of people who take their voting rights seriously, especially with minorities, because it gives a lot of states free reign to make any rule they want, restricting people's rights to vote. We have seen it in the last 2 years. Don't be surprised you see it slowly right now. And this here, what the Supreme Court did, pretty much paved the way for the South and other states in the North. Because let's be honest, the North states are just as guilty as this as well, to actually make voter rules that can actually discriminate against minorities. And this is something that that a lot of people are very, very worried. The Supreme Court struck down Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act on Tuesday, a provision of the lawmaker's civil rights law that designate which part of the country must have changes to their voting laws, cleared by the federal government or in federal court. The article also says in a 5-4 ruling authored by Chris Justin, John Roberts, and joined by Justice Anita Scale, I believe, Anthony Kennedy, Claire Thomas, and Samuel Alto, ruled in the Salisbury Court versus holders that this have changed dramatically. In the South, in the nearly 50 years since the Voting Rights Act was signed in 1965, the court option said it did not struck down the act of Congress lightly, and said it took care to avoid ruling on the constitutionality of the Voters' Right Act. In a separate case back in 2009, Congress could have updated the coverage formula at the time, but it did not. But it did not do so. Its failure to act leaves us today with no choice but to declare Section 4 unconstitutional. The formula in that the section can no longer be used as a bias for subject judicial to pre-clearance. Sorry if I've read that a little bit wrong. The Voters' Right Act has recently been used to block a voter ID law in Texas and denied the implementation of another in South Carolina. Both states are no longer subject to these requirements because the court's ruling on Tuesday. So basically, if they try to go back on that voters' right law, they can do it without worrying about the federal interfering. Again, it brings a scary situation as to how far a lot of these states are willing to take it, what excuse they used to really take it. Because let's be honest, the last 2 years, the excuse were they're trying to fight voters fraud, which there was none. They just threw that out there, not showing any evidence whatsoever, pretty much restricting people from voting. Um, and it just raised a lot of question as to what excuses they can do to add on more restrictions in terms of voter registration. And here's the reason why I'm a little worried about this and why I think the Fed should make it into a constitutional law, at least to protect this part of it, to make it clear that this is the rule, this is what everybody needs to go by. End of story. There was a guy in Portland. There was a huge turnout in Portland of minorities, mostly blacks, that voted for Obama. This guy literally came up and said he wanted an investigation because he thought voters fraud was, and his excuse was that he doesn't remember how many blacks in his district that voted. He went on to say everybody had the right to vote and so forth, but he doesn't know he doesn't know that many black people living in that state, and he doesn't know any white friends who know that many black people live in that state. So he wanted to find out about it. Basically, what the racist tactics is that he can't believe that blacks actually turned out to vote for to vote in that election, which just boggled my head, and that's how arrogant and stupid that even sound. And it raised a lot of questions. So again, he had to backtrack and say, apologize, I was out of context, I'm not a racist, I play basketball with black guys. Again, it just made matters worse. But it goes to show just how much they're using to use that card to make laws that is ridiculous. And one of the Republican senators have actually came out forward and said, yeah, we're doing this because we don't want blacks to vote. We know that most likely they're going to be vote Democrat. That's not going to help us. So if we can actually discourage them from voting or try and take as much as make it tougher for them to even register to vote, that's a plus on us because that's one less vote to worry about. And that's the situation that I'm concerned when coming to these Voters Act. Because as much as everybody said states' rights and everything else, sometimes screaming for that and having the state decide on what's going on in this country and not having the feds monitor what's going on can lead to bad things. It led to bad things in the past, in the 1960s and the 50s. We had Jim Crow laws and laws pretty much stripping away any rights that any African American had back in those times. That can happen again unless somebody step up and say, hey, yo, this is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And voters' rights, which I take very seriously. I take voting extremely seriously. That is the voice we have for anyone, black, white, whatever. And if here somebody want to restrict or take it away, I just simply it boggles my mind, and I simply can't accept that. That is the most principal law of being an American citizen that we have, and I get mad when people don't use that, don't exercise that right, because other countries don't have that luxury. Other countries don't have they don't have that power to voice their own opinion and vote someone out who is not doing a good job. We have that. It's not a perfect system, of course. We all know that, but we still have something, and it's something is better than nothing. And to have someone try to restrict that right or make it almost impossible to exercise that right is something that I don't never accept. So hearing this, yeah, I'm worried about it. I'm very, very worried about it. And it don't seem that Congress, from both sides, are bringing up this issue of making a new amendment, or actually strengthening the amendment we got, making sure our voting rights isn't hindered. And that's the thing that I'm very, very disappointed that no congressperson have came up and stepped up and say, "Yo, we gotta make a law because we can't just rely on the states to do the right thing on this, because it's already been proven that if they can't take our rights away from either voting or from other laws they tend to make up, they will do it. They'll do it and make up some excuse. And we need to make sure they know this is not right. This is something that it was given to me by the forefathers that I have. I want to keep this, and you can know you're not going to do this. You're not going to take my voters' rights away from me just because you want to keep your friends and yourself in power. And that's what it is, a power play when it comes to these voter laws. because there's no real reason why they should make these voting laws. Because to be honest with you, we didn't have voter fraud in God knows how long. If anything, it's the people who's making these laws are the ones committing the fraud in the first place. That's how I see it. But you guys may disagree. I'll leave the article here for you guys to read. But it does bring a question as to what Congress is going to do. Is Congress going to make it a new amendment? And what the state's going to do in terms of trying to restructure voting laws in their country for better and for worse. So I'd like to hear your opinion on this, guys. I really, really do. It is something that I think people need to take seriously and need to really keep an eye on months, weeks, years down the road. Now let's head to Texas. We'll read the headlines on this one. The Texas abortion bill filibustered by the state senator Wendy Davis is dead. Now I'm going to read the article. It says the Texas anti-abortion bill, which threatened to close nearly all the abortion clinics in the state and prompted an 11-hour filibuster by the state Senate. Willie Williams said it's dead. The Austin American Statesman reported. The lawmaker had voted on a Senate Bill 5 before a special session and at 12 a.m. local time. However, more than 400 protesters halted the proceedings 15 minutes before roll call could be completed with what they call a people filibuster, the Associated Press reported. A crowd of demonstrators in the Capitol cried, "Shame, shame," when Davis filibuster was halted by Lieutenant Governor Davis Duhars, who ruled that her decision of a mandatory ultrasound testing was off topic. Then the protester roared after the state senator Livered Van Deput asked, "At which point must female senators raise their hand or her vote to be recognized over her male colleagues?" Interesting. Their cries continue to echo inside the chambers and over the live stream, which by thousands around the world until after the midnight deadline passed. The article continues saying, although the Republican lawmakers later claimed the bill had passed in time, Democrats denied that the vote was complete before the clock ran out on the session. A timestamp showing the vote complete at midnight was a deciding factor. This will not become law. Senator John Whitmer, Democrat, told Austin America Statesman. In response, the crowd of protesters gathered in the Capitol cheering and began signing an Eye of Texas, the alma of the University of Texas at Austin. The article also continues. Carter Richardson, president of Planned Parenthood, also responds with joy to the news. According to the Texas Tribune, Dostot was less than pleased by the evening turn in events after ruling that the time on SB 5 had expired. He told reporters that an unruly mob using Occupy Wall Street tactics had derailed legislation that was designed to protect women and babies. Sure, whatever you say. I'll get to that in a minute, but I'm going to finish reading the whole topic. The legislature would have prohibit abortion after 20 weeks of pregnancy, regulate first-timer abortion clinics at the Abergro Surgery Center, and restrict access to medicated abortions. Had it passed, nearly all of the clinics in the state would have been shuttered. They then also hinted that Governor Rick Perry may call another special session to get the bill passed, saying that it's over, it's been fun, but we see you soon. Despite a long day filibuster, David was upset when she greeted a crowd of supporters who applauded the senator and chanted her name. Today, was democracy in action. David said, "You all are the voice, and we're speaking for. I'm sorry, speaking for from the floor." Hmm. Okay. This doesn't surprise me at all. All right, there's been laws being thrown left and right on this topic. It's very clear that a lot of senators, mostly Republicans, mostly those who claim to be pro-lifers, even though technically Texas pro-life doesn't seem to be accurate when they execute 500 people. One of them happens to be the first woman executed in the state in a long time. But that's a story I'm keeping single for another day because it is an interesting story that needs to stay by itself. Um, it's it doesn't shock me that they keep making these bills attacking not only Planned Parenthood but other places, basically telling women that they're trying to protect them, which they're really not. They're really not. This is their own beliefs that they're trying to throw out people again, throwing out people, and it's gotten to the point where they're just making radical laws of the radical laws, and basically doing everything they can to shut down these agencies without worried about stepping over Roe versus Wade. So this is their way of actually doing that, and they're going to continue doing this. Again, this is not over by a long shot. They're probably going to take a while, take a breather, let everything quiet down, and then they're going to do something else in terms of passing something into legislation. Um, Again, they're not concerned about the women's and babies. I guarantee you that they're not concerned because the moment that baby's born, watch how many of those same people who want to protect babies saying, "Oh, this mother and this child is being a burden to society. We have to pay taxes, blah blah blah." They're not concerned about that. They're not concerned about protecting life. I'm not buying into that. I don't care what anybody says here, because again, if they were one, if they're so pro-lifers, one, they wouldn't have the death penalty and using it so rampantly like they're doing right now. It doesn't add up. Um, I'm happy that it actually got shot down, but again, I'm using caution because this is not over. Texas will try something new. Texas will try and pass a different law. And as long as you got guys like Rick Perry who claims that God is the law of the land in Texas, then you're gonna have people continuing to throw that law again and again and again. That's the thing I want to keep that in mind. That's the thing I think people need to keep that in mind. But other than that, yeah, it's a big victory for Planned Parenthood and other clinics who probably would have been shut down in Texas had this been passed, which I think that was the intention to begin with. No doubt about that. They're just using the "we need to protect babies" as pretty much an excuse. But again, I think people need to continue voicing their outrage and their own opinion on this matter because this is not going to stop. This is not going to stop. They're going to keep going at it, and until they eventually get what they want. So far, they haven't got what they want, but they still going to have to voice their opinion. Say, "Hey, look, enough already," because they still didn't get the picture. They still did not get the picture. I still call this a war on women. It hasn't been like it was a few months ago, but there are still people who still making dumb statements from rape to basically what they considered Planned Parenthood being baby killers. When the reality is that Planned Parenthood has something more than just provide abortion. As a matter of fact, abortion is a small scale to what they actually really truly provide. But a lot of these people don't see that. They just see abortion, we need to shut them down. That's all they see. Like to hear your opinion on that matter. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that matter. I really do. But again, your opinions, whether you agree with me or not, I will read them. I will also respond to them. Let's go on to George Zimmerman. Man, was this getting crazy. The trial haven't really been fresh off the ground yet, and already I'm hearing some crazy stuff, reading some crazy stuff from the lawyer making a knock knock joke. Really? This is the jeez. Any case, a lot of witnesses are being called. One of the articles I had here is that the prosecutor wants to admit past 911 calls, which is not surprising that they want to show that Zimmerman has a pattern going on with him. Zimmer also bringing up his witnesses, but already the tension with this trial alone is heating up, and the coverage of the trial is getting more and more intense as it go along, and the trial is also becoming more and more insane. Again, when I heard the lawyer for George Zimmerman making a joke for reasons I do not know, um, I guess he wanted to lighten the tone or something, but it's very, very weird. You don't normally hear something like that in a trial. So already it's becoming insane. It's becoming a madhouse. Um, Hopefully there will be less of that as the trial goes on, because that's the last thing I want to see. And I don't think it paints a pretty picture of Zimmerman's team as a whole. I really don't. There was also some talks about the jury selection and how an article had mentioned that an all-women's jury could possibly set Zimmerman free. Um, there, that's may or may be a possibility. I don't think that's really much a factor. If it's an all-women's jury, all I ask is review the evidence, ask accordingly. Take everything in consideration from both sides, and come up with your decision. But to me, I really don't think that an all-women's jury is going to be a major factor, unless there's something I'm not reading into what the article was saying. But the one thing is that you're seeing a lot of witnesses being talked about. A lot of people are voicing their opinions. So the trial is coming on strong, and the coverage is gradually being shown on a daily basis. So who knows how this is going to go down? Like I said, I'm leaning to one side or the other. I'm keeping an open mind of how this thing is going to flip over. I got to hear what the prosecution is doing. Like I said, they want to admit past 911 calls. If that happens during a trial, and it shows Zimmerman having a very serious past in terms of being paranoid, which was one of the major problems that many people have voiced to begin with. Him having a policeman complex where he thought he was the law, and thought by becoming a neighborhood watch gave him the power to do whatever the hell he wants. That can play into a part, and also the confrontation, what actually really happened. I'm also curious in seeing if Zimmerman himself is going to take the stand, which a lot of people say he may not, but I think that in this situation, he may want to say something, because if all these evidence that's going to be thrown out, if all the witnesses are going to be presented, he needs to at least explain to himself what actually happens. I think his lawyers are trying to stop him from doing that. I think they looked at the situation, what happened when he did the interview, but this is something that if there's a lot of evidence stacked against him, his only defense probably is to probably take a stand and explain word for word what actually happened. Who knows? He may not have to. It may not. It may turn out the prosecutor don't have enough evidence to convict him. But if the phone calls plus the witnesses are credible, he's going to have to do something to actually convince the juror that he didn't murder this person in cold blood. Now on to one last story I actually did not intend to talk about, but I have to talk about it now because I have been watching about it, and something happened that actually I wasn't surprised it happened, but it's still something that I think the world is watching. This has constantly been popped up on my screen every now and then, and that's Nelson Mandela. About a few hours ago, it was reported that Nelson Mandela was dead, only to find out he wasn't dead. Turns out that somebody jumped the gun, and the reason why they jumped the gun is because a lot of the media, especially in international waters, is on death watch right now with Nelson Mandela. Now, according to recent reports, they said that he's okay. He's actually recovering, which is good to hear, because about 48 hours ago he was in critical condition. It doesn't look like he was going to make it through another few days. So every time I actually was doing something. I kept left my left eye on my ticker, which is right on left my screen, and I was hearing Nelson Mandela, but it didn't say he was dead. It was alive. It was just Nelson Mandela, and then it said Nelson Mandela again, and then it said Nelson Mandela is still in critical condition. People was offering their prayers for Nelson Mandela, but they didn't say he was dead. And then finally, something came out and said Nelson Mandela is slowly recovering. No sooner than that, there was a report that somebody jumped the gun and said that Nelson Mandela has died, but then they said, wait, he didn't die, it was a mistake. So they're getting a little bit slack on that because they did jump the gun. But I'm not mad at the reporter. I just think that what happened was that he probably got the news from someone and immediately reported. You know how the media is. Sometimes when they hear something, they want to be the first reporter, and sometimes they don't check. They check the resources to make sure that they got their facts straight. So it could happen, and especially with everybody's watching this great leader. You better believe that there's someone is chopping at the bit to say Nelson Mandela dead at this age. Bring bring out his life story from the time he was in prison to the presidency, all the way to his death. So nothing didn't surprise me, but make no mistake about it. Every media is pretty much keeping their airwaves ears open to hear when this guy does pass away, and it's unfortunate that you have those guys out there that just their sole purpose is to wait and hear what's going on. But with Nelson Mandela's condition, the way it was, how it was deteriorating, how it was being reported, yeah, I wasn't surprised. I myself was actually waiting any minute now to hear that Nelson Mandela was passing away. I'm guilty of that myself, because he was a very important figure, and he's been a important figure pretty much throughout most of his career, even after his presidency, and that says a lot. Um, of course, how I got to know Nelson Mandela wasn't really from the media. Surprisingly, it was from a movie, Serafina, which was actually based on a Broadway play, and that's when I found out who Nelson Mandela was. And the movie was so powerful that I said, this may be based on a true event. Let me check it out. And then I realized what Nelson Mandela was, why he was such important to South Africa, and what was going on. No sooner or later, when the news came out he was running for president, that I really started to take an interest in what was going on, because South Africa was pretty much divided. It was very much divided, and when he came into the picture, once the division, once that was pretty much eradicated, when he came to become president, a lot of worries has happened. But he actually kept the country united in his own way. Many people actually thought he was going to do what what the whites have done to him and his people, but he didn't do that. And that shows what a great leader he was. In fact, another movie showed that with a film that I think Brad Pitt was, no, Matt Damon was in. I can't get the damn name, but Clint Eastwood directed it. It was based on a true event, and my uncle pretty much explained why that was an important movie I should take a look at. Sadly, I didn't take a look at that film, but I didn't need to, because I did read the history on that, as well as what my uncle told me and how important that rugby tournament was. But anyway, yeah, everybody's pretty much keeping their airwaves on, pretty much to hear Nelson Mandela's condition. Is he going to get out of the hospital? He's not out of the woods yet, but you can really much sense that everyone is waiting for the news that Nelson Mandela passed away, because the way they kept covering it, like I said, they keep covering it pretty much every couple of minutes. You're getting here new news, and it's finally slowed down, and they hear it again, and it finally slowed down. So they're keeping an eye on it. They're still keeping an eye on it right now, even though they said that his health has improved. They're still keeping an eye on that news that he had passed on. Well, I saved this one for last. I might as well talk about this a little bit more, but I'm not going to take too much time on this because I'm already at the 34-minute mark, which is actually a good thing. The Paula Deen situation has really divided a lot of people. A lot of people coming for support for her, black and white, to make that being clear, in terms of what has happened to her and why she's getting fired, because she is losing a lot of sponsors. She's even losing a lot of investors. and is really taking, and she's really, our empire's really taking a pounding. Um, I'm gonna, basically talk about not only just my feeling on this again, but the feeling I'm getting from a lot of people. One of them I will leave a link to because it's very interesting how he's really not siding with anyone. He basically voiced his own feelings, and he brought up some very good points. There's some I agree, but there's also some I disagree with. But at the same time, I respect him for at least coming out and voicing his own opinion on this situation. Because I think it's important that everyone, black and white, voice their own opinion on it. And he voiced his own opinion. He's a black guy, by the way. He voiced his own opinion, and what he said, I can actually respect. One of the things that was brought up is that she shouldn't lose a job for something she said in the past. Another thing was saying that is that if we are so angry with the N word, we shouldn't be using it. Both black, white, whatever. A lot of people have said that that is one thing when it comes to when somebody says something wrong, we want to bury them, even though we're not doing a damn thing to better ourselves. I can understand that. I can respect that kind of feedback as well. Here's the thing that I get out of all this. I've said this before in the first video. I'll say it again here. I am not at all mad at Paula Deen. I'm not even upset at the fact that she used the N word. It doesn't shock me because I hear it too many times, both from both sides. She's not the first one to use it. She ain't the last one. That's not what concerns me with her. What concerns me with her is the fact is in that defamation, it was brought to attention that there was allegations of sexual and racial discrimination, and her brother was mentioned, and she didn't took any actions. And I know a lot of people saying, "Well, it's her brother. What do you want to do?" That's not an excuse. Something like that you gotta take very seriously, and you gotta take actions on it immediately. If especially when it turns out to be true, which from what I've read on that document, part of it was. The fact is that she said that the guy said that he's a nice guy. They make mistakes. It's pretty much ignoring the fact that this happened in the workplace and actually happened on more than one occasion. And to me, that says a lot, more so than her using the N-word. Her actions says a lot just on that statement alone. And also the fact is that she still hangs on to that certain mentality even today, where she describes the Civil War and how a bunch of her and her friends, who by the way had slaves away, a bad thing. That this was a tragedy for them, and that's something that I can't really get with. I can't really get on with. It's a reflection of how she conduct herself, especially this lawsuit. Now, in terms of her telling a friend that she was black as the board, which I have seen, I agree with what the guy said. If it didn't pertain to me, I shouldn't worry about it. If the person has no problem with what she said, then why do we care? And he's right. It didn't reflect her. That if that's her friend and she don't mind, then so be it. I know a lot of people who says crazy stuff to each other, but they don't mean it in a mean way. It's all good because they know each other. They know each other for years. I grant you that. Here's the problem that I have. Here's the problem that I have with those who are well-known racists but pretend not to be and pro. I got these many black friends. I have played basketball with a black friend. Anytime when you throw that in there, it automatically leads to the fact that you're a racist prick. And the reason is it goes by what one of the guys said. It was a formula they had, a book of not being looked as a racist. Pretty much, shielding that by associating it with a certain select black people, so that way it doesn't come across as you being racist. That's what people see when they saw that video. It may not have been that way. She may not intend it to be that way. But that's what people saw. Even I saw it a little bit. Said, why do they always have to do this? But again, if the guy doesn't mind, and it was all in good fun, and that's between them and them, hey, I ain't mad. He was talking to me. but it is something that I think that she needs to be mindful of. Now, as for today's show, yeah, I did see the Today Show again. I'm gonna repeat it. I saw the whole 13 minutes of it. Um, there were some things that I think that she was very truthful in. They asked her, knowing me, I would not fire me, even with the situation that has happened. Um, but the point is that in a business setting like this, I don't blame any of the businesses for doing what they're doing because again, if you see, not just forget about the video where she was saying about the blackboard about the her friend being as black as the board. There were other stuff that is there. There is a disregard for a safe workplace in her company. All right. You add that plus the fact is that when she did that whole statement, it didn't seem remorseful, and she seemed very comfortable of throwing that stuff out there. The Target, Food Channel, other companies, they're gonna panic. They're gonna say, "Yo, we can't have this woman there because now it's hurting our bottom line. Now you're hurting us," and that's what they're doing. They're just cutting ties because they know who shops in their stores. They know who's gonna bring in the most profit. Yeah, there are people protesting that. Yes, there are people showing up in support. But like I said before, it's few and small in between. All right, if people who normally bought her stuff to begin with were pretty much minorities, and now they're losing that cash flow. Guess what's going to happen? They're all going to cut you loose because they don't want to be associated with that situation. Now, am I saying that she should disappear forever? No. Um, I believe that people do deserve a second chance. I do believe that people deserve to get themselves back on their feet, and I don't think that her past should keep her down. But that for this time being, right now, there's a lot of stuff that has been coming out there that she needs to address, including herself and how she conducts herself, not only against blacks but whites, Hispanic, whatever. I will say this with the Today Show. There is a point that she made. I can't stress this too further, because even some of the people who didn't like what she did in terms of the N word, how she handled the situation with one of our employees. There is one thing I do agree. We all throwing the N word out too much. Okay, and it's hard for me to get mad at her when my own people do it all the time and act like this is a term of endearment. There's nothing endearing about the N word. Period. There's nothing endearing. We should not hold that word as our own. We shouldn't. Right? The N word means what it means. When somebody's called the N word, they're calling themselves a low life, dumb, a bitch. That's what it is. You're scum of the earth to them. That's what it is. It's a very deterring, very down-putting word. And the fact that people want to adopt it as their own, I scratch my head. I don't understand it. Especially other words that is just as similar as this word. I don't get it. I don't understand why they would do that. So just keep that in mind. If you're gonna get mad at somebody else using the word that's of the opposite color, you should also not use the word yourself, because again, the word, no matter how you change it, how you rearrange it, it still means the same thing. But that's pretty much my opinion on that. I'd love to hear you guys' opinion on it. I will leave links to the stories below. I will also leave links to the USA Today. If there is still up there, because I'm pretty sure there is, if the whole Today Show interview, I will also place it there as well. But I'd like to hear your opinion on these matters. I'd like to hear your opinion on these stories. So until then, this is J77 saying take care, be safe. I'll talk to you soon.